discuss really briefly was just, trying to keep things fresh with our events, right? And so the theme that I was thinking of with spring and Easter and sort of that whole renewal thing of like finding a new career, the type of culture you're going to be looking for, the type of company you want to be involved with, how to do your job search after you've been in a job search for some time. I know some of the people coming today have been at more than one of our events. We try to run one once every month or every month and a half. And so, just I think that's what we're really going to be talking about today is like, how do you choose your next opportunity? How do you navigate it? How do you navigate an extended job search, both mentally and physically? What things you can do for your own mental health and sanity, where you see on LinkedIn, it can be an echo chamber of people coming online and crying basically about how terrible it is and so on, right? So I think keeping positivity at the forefront of your job search, because anything you post online is going to be seen by potential employers. I think that's one thing we got to be realizing. And I've seen a lot of people kind of hurt their job prospects by ranting and going pretty crazy. And I try to message them maybe after and be like, as much as you're frustrated and we appreciate what you're going through, it's like, the next CEO that you're going to be interviewing is going to see that post. And if you said something bad, the internet is forever. The internet is forever. So look, we're trying to keep things positive going into spring, and that's why the Easter theme. And for those as well, like my Easter is actually in May 5th this year. We celebrate the Orthodox Easter. So in the spirit of sort of Easter and all that, that's why we had this event. So
we're renewing the faith of job seekers.
that's right. Sometimes you need to hear it from people, right? You need to have a support group to sort of help you go through it, right? So I like to think that's what this is, right? So
well, you got a good crew of us together, and I will toot my own horn because I have worked with Jessica and Chelsea in the past and adore them, and well, I always keep it 100, so
it's definitely a small community of people, and they're like, I invite different groups, and then they're like, oh yeah, I know the speaker, and and I was like, oh, are you guys competing with each other? Is everyone cool? Like, I don't, because we're recruiters, we don't do any of this stuff, and so funny seeing how there's a lot of camaraderie, and I see Virginia coming in, posting on your stuff, and vice versa, and it's just nice to see that it's everyone's here for a good reason, right? You want to help job seekers, you want to help people. That's why you get into HR or any kind of function like this, right? I just call it for-profit social work. Honestly, it's helping people.
I was a social worker before, so yes.
All right. Well, I think, here's Rick Ross joining. All right, what we're going to do is, so while the speakers are going, just to keep things under control, we ask if you do have any questions, please just throw them into our chat anytime, and then the speakers will get to your questions when we can. Anything that's missed, feel free to retype the question again later, and we'll get to it, right? We're trying to keep this to 1 hour just because everyone has functions they got to get to and things, and trying to give every speaker about 20 minutes to get into it. So just to give a quick intro, and what I'd ask is everyone who's not speaking, if you can turn off your mic and your camera, just so we have our speakers visible, that'd be great. I'll do a quick intro that we have, and then we'll get right into it. So first off, we have Teegan Bartos, who's founder of Jolt Your Career. Some of her services that she'll provide is executive coaching, as well as helping people navigate their careers. And I have actually, I had a whole summary that just got deleted, but with Teegan, she's been on our previous coaching, shows that we had, and she's been great in terms of helping people with, top performers who are too busy to update their resume, or people that are not sure where they're going. So she's able to help with that kind of consultation. She also helps with LinkedIn optimization as well. So definitely check out Jolt Your Career. After the event, everyone will receive an email with information on all 3 speakers. So you can take your time and review the information we have, as well as a few free giveaways for everybody. So we welcome Teegan. Also like to welcome Chelsea J. She's founder of Seasoned and Growing. She helps professionals navigate their career, and she partners with individuals and companies providing tools, resources, and content and learning programs. Also, Jessica Sweet, a career coach and licensed therapist. Jessica will help you navigate your stickiest career issues, as well as being able to support you on career change. She's over 14 years experience as a coach and therapy training. So those are our 3 speakers for today, and we'd like to get right into it with Teegan starting. We're going to try to keep it to 20 minutes per speaker so we can get some good insights from them, and keep it a very conversational type of informal meeting today. So hope everyone can get something of value from it.
All right, well, hey everybody, I am Teegan Bartos, as John said, founder of Jolt Your Career. My background stems from working in workforce development with the Department of Labor, where I would help people who had just experienced a layoff, typically a mass layoff, because I was the reduction force case manager for the Cook County and surrounding areas, and figure out ways on how to find them employment. And so very tricky situation, similar to like we're facing now in the job market. The recession I was managing during that time, as well as companies going through technical transformations. And how do you get a traditional marketer from Sears a new job when every single company is requiring digital marketers? Or how do you get a CIO from Motorola a new job when they refuse to embrace cloud technology, and that's why their division failed or their product became obsolete? And so that is where my perspective comes in at. And so anytime you feel like you're not getting results you want, or you're spinning your wheels, or there's just some type of misalignment, I always encourage people to go back to the beginning. And I'm sure Chelsea and Jessica will chime in, but for me, I feel like that starts with clarity. When you are going through the job search process, yeah, you need your resume and your LinkedIn, and you got to get ready to interview. But if you don't have clarity on who you are, what you value, how you present yourself as a leader, how you bring value to organizations, what you like to do, well, what you're good at, and then what you like to do, because sometimes you're good at things that you don't like to do. And we don't want you to be running from something. We want you to be running to something. So even if you are currently laid off, we still want there to be alignment, because fulfillment in your career is really important. And so when you're trying to figure out, hey, like something just doesn't seem to be clicking, people don't seem to be articulating who I am in a way that resonates with me. If people can't look at your profile and say, okay, this is who Teegan is as a leader, it's the content isn't resonating. And it might be because you're not a content writer, or it might be because you lack the clarity yourself. So John's going to be emailing everybody a clarity handout that you can go through. It's something that I used to provide to my team when I took over new teams and wanted to get to know them a little bit better and what their goals were, modified for the job search. But it first starts off with, what are your core values? Because who you are at work, at home, doesn't change when you're at work. And when you're looking for work, there's lots of different things that matter that my other ladies here are going to be talking about. But some of those categories might be personal growth, finances, relationships and family, spirituality, health and fitness. Work can impact those things. If you don't want to work on Sundays, then you may need to figure out an employment that makes sure that you can have off. If you value health and fitness and the commute is so long that you don't ever have time to make it into the gym, then that might be an automatic, nope, I can't do that. So that way you can get closer to what you want. So like for me, one of my biggest core values is integrity. If somebody is going to ask me to do something that's a little on the shady side, it makes me feel very uncomfortable and I don't want to work for them. And I will refuse to do it if I really think if it crosses over that unethical line. And I found out when I launched my own business, when I gave up becoming a recruiter and I launched my own firm, I realized how important community was to me. And as you're going through your job search, and like John said, some of you might have been unemployed for a little while. The silver lining in some of that is if you're being intentional about figuring out what looks good and what doesn't look good, you're going to get to know yourself better and better and better. And so, for me, community is very important. The whole entire work from home, be my own boss thing, it's isolating, it's depressing. And so I have to make sure I join events like this where I get to talk to all these amazing panelists and meet all of you amazing people to feel like I stay connected. Otherwise, a piece of me feels empty, and that's not a good feeling to have. And so as you're going through what your values are, you're going to figure out how to present yourself. One of the reasons why I got congressional recognition at one of my previous positions is because I built a mentorship program. At the end of the day, I built a community of good people wanting to get better and hone their craft. It wasn't rocket science, it's just a part of my innate values, and I was able to showcase that at work. And as you're going through your career stories, when you're thinking about how to interview, how to present yourself, you'll find themes throughout. Oh, I was really like, this wasn't in my job description, but I'm so proud of this. What does that stem back to? Oftentimes it stems back to your values and things you enjoy doing most. And then I would challenge all of you to think about your likes and dislikes. Because with the next role, you want to reduce doing the things you dislike and increase doing the things that you like. And then figuring out what your top 3 priorities are. Because no job is going to be perfect, but there are things that you really want to say, okay, in my next role, I really want to be doing X, Y, and Z. And when you have that clarity, your vibe can kind of attract your tribe. If people know you for X, Y, and Z versus A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, it's going to be so much easier for people to advocate for you, for people to feel like they understand what your goals are so they can better help you. If any of you have ever conducted a SWOT analysis for work before, I challenge you to do it for yourself. It is amazing how big our blinders are. And so do it yourself and then ask other people, previous colleagues, partners, friends, especially if you're going through a hard time. It can be difficult to remember why you're such a badass. And so going to that former colleague, that you used to love going to lunch with or something like that and saying, hey, I'm just trying to regroup here. Would you mind, I did a SWOT analysis. Would you mind taking a look at it and give me any feedback? And then they say, do you remember you did this and you were able to solve this and da 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 da. And now all of a sudden you have a regained confidence in what you have to bring to the table. Because sometimes when we're on extended job searches, our confidence decreases and it messes with our mind, which Jessica is going to talk about further. But if you can really do an internal analysis of what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, and an external analysis by working with people like John, who owns an executive search firm, what are the opportunities on the market and what are threats? Some threats might be, well, during COVID, you moved really far away from any employer hub. And when remote work was abundant, that was no problem. But now you're 2.5 hours away from any employer you'd want to work for. So that limits your opportunities. That's a threat. It's not a deal breaker though. But you just want to be aware of some of the uphill battles that you're going to face. So that way you can go into the situation with clarity and some realistic expectations on time. There's a lot of different statistics out there about the average job search, but the Department of Labor has unemployment benefits for 6 months because the average job search takes 6 months. And that's an average. It's very different depending on what industry you're in, your seniority, etc. For executives, for example, that job search is closer to 1 year because certain C-suite positions, they don't turn over as frequently, and there's less of those roles. And so having the threat of, hey, this is going to be a longer job search, is a realistic expectation to set forth. So threat kind of sounds nasty in the SWOT, but that's what they call it. They call it a SWOT. So don't be too upset by the word threat, but it's a thing. And then I really believe in the perfect fits. And I talk about this all the time on social media. I drop my LinkedIn URL in the chat. Feel free to follow my content if you'd like. I'm not the best storyteller. I'm like really good at identifying facts, which is probably why I worked for the government and then became a resume writer, because we just stick to the facts. But I do share a lot, and one of them is fit. And so what fit stands for is internal and external motivators that can impact your job search. So if you're getting to the point where there just aren't opportunities in your target market. So I've got a client right now who works for a grand transportation company. His current title is VP of commercial operations. He's in charge of IT, marketing, operation. I mean, there's like 7 different functions that are under him. And he was so focused on that title, he didn't realize that there were other opportunities out there and was missing so many jobs. So when he would be talking to executive search firms, he would say, oh, well, this is what I am and this is what I want to do. And it's like, no, there's so many other titles out there that you can do. So sometimes it's nice to break down what your perfect fit would be. So what are functions like the strengths and skills and job titles that would be interesting for you? And how are you going to have that fulfillment? Like, what do you feel your purpose is? How do you contribute to better society? That might be, analyzing people's books to make sure that organizations are doing right with their finances. So if you're an accountant, that could bring you fulfillment. Other people might think, absolutely not. I could never be an accountant. I want to be, out in the field, doing whatever, sales, talking to people, going to lunch. I'm right there with lunch, but how does that light your fire? And then for the I, what industries are you interested in? Right now, the tech industry is a really flat market, but healthcare, government services, construction, they are growing. Just because IT is in a flat market doesn't mean you have to stay away from them. It just might be wise for you to consider exploring other industries. And then the internal I is identity. Who are you and who do you believe that you can be? I really don't like when I work with a client and they say, well, I've never done that before. I can't do that job. Yeah, you can. Push yourself, allow yourself to be presented for opportunities that are stretches for you. You can go ahead and play it safe, talk to people about safe roles. But if there is a role that you think that you would be interested in, just believe in yourself to know that you figured it out before you can figure it out again. And then the T stands for things that matter. So what type of compensation package do you need? Because I've got a startup client that I'm working with right now for a CFO role who's paying 150. And then I have another Fortune 500 client where their CFO is in their total compensation package is over $1 million. Those are going to be 2 very different candidate profiles. So what is the financial rewards that you're looking for this job? What are your priorities in terms of work, lifestyle, spirituality, work setting, remote, hybrid, on-site, etc.? And then in terms of like your type, which is the other T, What does your personality say that would be a good fit for you? What are your preferences? If you can really think about what your perfect fit is, you can approach your job search, your stale job search, with a fresh perspective. You can make the slightest tweaks in your headline, in how you're networking with people, recalling people that you followed up with when you first got laid off or you first started your job search, and say, yeah, this process been heck of a time. I've realized what I want to be doing and have gotten some more clarity on that. And here it is, and would love to talk that through with you. Is there anybody that you can introduce me to, or do you have any insights on that? And you would be amazed at how, when you really have clarity on who you are, what you have to offer, and what comes next, how much more energy, how much more positivity, how much more hope that can bring to your job search. And I see I'm at 1:23 Central Time, so I'll go ahead and pass the mic over to whoever is going next.
Thanks, Teegan. That was great. Actually, we were going to have Chelsea go next. And if there's any questions, everybody, feel free to type them in our chat.
Wonderful. I'm so glad to be going after Teegan because I'm going to actually piggyback off of a lot of things that she said, especially about knowing yourself and your values and how that will really guide your job search and allow you to land in somewhere that is fulfilling and that boosts you up personally and professionally. So my focus is specifically going to be on identifying the ideal workplace culture for yourself. And I'm just going to go back a little bit and share a little bit more about my background and why I'm so passionate about leadership and workplace culture. So my background is primarily in leadership roles in a variety of industries, primarily the government and the nonprofit world. As I was in leadership roles, I often noticed that I would enter environments that weren't the most encouraging or engaging, and to be honest, they were flat out toxic. So I found myself trying to protect my employees and also trying to build them up and give them opportunities to find other positions and move forward and find better environments. One of the things that Teegan talked heavily about was knowing your values. And I want to encourage you today to place a high value on finding a great workplace culture. And this is because, whether you believe it or not, workplace culture can impact your life in so many ways, personally and professionally, in and outside of the workplace. And often for professionals who have never encountered or worked in a toxic work environment, they say, it's not a big deal. I can handle it. I know how to brush it off my shoulder and ignore people. But the thing is, toxic behavior isn't something that you can ignore. And once you start to get used to it, you'll notice that you start to internalize it, and it does affect you. And it affects your attitude and the way that you feel about yourself. I've seen it damage a lot of professionals who are amazing and competent, intelligent. I've seen it damage their level of self-esteem and confidence. And what happens when those two begin, to go downward? You get to the point where you don't believe that you're a good fit for your job. You don't want to take on new responsibilities or challenges. And you begin to believe that you're not worthy of going into another environment, which overall can hurt your professional growth and career, right? And it also affects the way that you show up in the workplace. Whenever you're dealing with toxic work environments or poor cultures, you'll notice that you stop speaking up, and you're nervous about sharing your opinion or area of expertise, and you no longer know what you represent, right? So that doesn't help you go to an interview and confidently walk in and say, hey, I'm amazing at this, I'm great at this, because you no longer believe it because you've been beaten down by the environment that you're in. A poor work culture also affects your ability to move up within the organization as well. I always tell professionals, You need to be able to have a great relationship with your direct supervisor, because they're the ones who open the door for new opportunities for you, because they often have to stand behind you and advocate for you in order for you to be able to get that raise or promotion. So if you have a supervisor that has fostered a poor work environment, they're verbally or mentally abusive towards you, it's going to be tough being able to move forward in your career. So I just wanted to share some of the ways that it can affect you. I've also seen it take an impact on people's health. I've seen a lot of people go out on sick leave just from stress and internalizing some of the issues in the toxic workplace, which, unfortunately leads to different illnesses. So I don't want that to be you. So that's why I always talk about workplace culture and the importance of great leadership. Now you're probably wondering, okay, I understand that a toxic workplace and workplace culture needs to be positive in order for me to thrive, but how do I find a positive workplace culture? Well, there's a lot of things that you can do. There's 3 different things. So number 1, I want you to be very mindful of your mindset and the actions that you take during the job search process. Now, Teegan mentioned that the average job search can take about 6 months, but she also said that it's different for a lot of different people, and it truly depends on your industry, your background, and the current market. And there's been no secret. Last year was really tough, and this year is really tough for a lot of professionals as well, unfortunately. What I don't want you to do is, once 6 months pass, I don't want you to start getting desperate to the point where you'll just take anything, right? And I can say from personal experience, years ago, I've been there where I was like, I just need a job. Let me hurry up and take this job. I knew it wasn't a good fit. I could tell that the culture wasn't the best during the interview process, but I still took it. And guess what happened? I ended up leaving 3 months later, right? And I had to explain that in interviews to come. So I don't want that to be you. I don't want you to go into an atmosphere that isn't going to serve you and, just do more harm. So be mindful of your mindset during your job search process. Now, whenever you're looking for cultures, how can you find a great one? It starts with looking at job postings, right? So I have found that there's certain language in job postings to be on the lookout for that might send out some red flags. I know this one is a controversial one because some people say, no, but I like that word a lot. But one of the number one words to me is when companies say, we're like a family here. And I know that's supposed to sound flowery and, oh, wonderful. They're going to be like my brothers and sisters and parents. But the reality is, many families are dysfunctional. You do not need another dysfunctional family. You might already have one to deal with, so you don't need another, all right? And you also want to remember that a lot of times family members cross boundaries. And I know we all have those family members in our own families who, like, we tell them, hey, I really can't do that right now. I really can't commit to that obligation right now. And you have that family member who's like, oh, come on, just this one time. Don't you love me? Don't you care about me? Can you do it for me? And for workplaces that function as families, you will find that a lot of boundaries are consistently crossed, no matter what. And it just becomes habit and it becomes expected. A lot of families feel this blind sense of loyalty. I've gone into organizations where people are being, verbally attacked each day, and it's not a good environment for them. And I say, why do you stay? What are you doing? And they're like, oh, well, my boss reminds me of my mom or my dad, and I've been here for so long, and I just feel like I'll disappoint them if I leave. There's one thing to love your job and enjoy what you do, but you never want to have a blind sense of loyalty to the point where it's hurting you, but you're not making a move. So that's why the family thing goes out the window, and you want to avoid that. Another red flag when it comes to job postings is if you notice that a specific job posting is constantly reposted. And I'm sure many of you have probably seen that, where you think, wait, I think that they were hiring for that position 4 months ago. Why on earth is it posted again? I'm going to save you some time and just take a wild guess that it didn't work out with the person that they hired. So you don't need to be the tester to run in and see if it's going to work for you. I'll give you an example. I went into an organization when I was younger, and this position had been posted a couple times, but I was like, oh, this company has a great name behind them. A lot of the community knew their brand. So I was like, let me just jump in here. As soon as I started the role and I noticed, whoa, something's not right here, I talked to a couple of colleagues and they're like, oh, yeah, you're the 5th person in this position this year alone. So what does that tell you? If it doesn't work for other people, I promise you it's most likely not going to work for you as well. Another thing when it comes to job postings, as you're looking through them, if you notice that they, rely heavily on working around the clock or putting in a lot of work during office hours, or there's frequent overtime, that usually means that they have an issue with work-life balance. And if that is something that you value, that may not be the place for you. Another thing that I highly recommend whenever you do find a posting that you're interested in, instead of just applying right away, hop on over to their website and take a look at their leadership and their current team and just see what it looks like. I personally value diverse spaces, and I'm not just talking about, I'm not talking about race or anything like that or background, but I'm talking about men, women, different ages, different backgrounds. I like to see a mix of everyone, just because that fosters innovation and different ideas. If everyone looks, talks, and acts the same, that organization, I promise you, most of the time is not very innovative because they're not having new ideas come in. They're just sticking with the same old, same old. So just take a look and ask yourself, would I fit in to this culture? And is this something that I want to even be a part of? So take a look at that as well. Look at their mission statement and see what they do in their community. See what causes and initiatives that they work towards, what they donate to make sure that your values are in line with theirs as well, and that they care about some of the things that you care about too. Now, another one of my favorites is dissecting the culture during an interview. If you get to the stage of an interview, this is your time to ask the hard questions. And whenever I say this, a lot of professionals tell me, Chelsea, I need the job. I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to seem hard to work with. But the truth is, if it's a good culture and a good set of people that you want to be around, they're not going to be offended. They're going to be open and excited to answer your questions that you have. Because remember this, they're supposed to be selling the organization to you because they need you. If you're looking for an example, I'm going to give you one. So periodically, I like to test the market as well, just so that I can see what my clients may be going through and what roadblocks they may be running into. So I'll throw my resume out there and I'll apply for different positions, and I will go through in interviews, and that just makes sure that my skills are fresh and I'm giving my clients up-to-date information. So I recently attended an interview, and it was virtual, and it was a little bit off. Everyone seemed to be on a different page. And at the end, one of the questions that I asked after they gave me an opportunity, I said, I want each of you to describe your workplace culture in one word. And they all froze. Like, I thought the screen froze for a minute, but they just stopped to gather themselves. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. And they went down the line, and one person said overwhelming. Ding, ding, ding. Like, I don't want my workplace to be overwhelming when I walk in every day. Another person said a rush. Another person says, I don't know what to expect each day. That lets me know, ding, 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 you are unorganized. And then another person said, stop, go. And another person said, yes, maybe. So what do you think all of that told me about their culture? And none of them said it with a smile on their face. They were not very happy about their answers, but hopefully that made them reflect on their own careers and what they're doing, right? Because I always say that life is too short to be in an organization where you're unhappy and it's not a good fit. But all of that let me know. Yes, someone just put in the chat, run for the hills. I absolutely did. I was like, even if I wanted a job and I was considering it, this would definitely not be the place because you're unorganized. It sounds like, yeah, you're unorganized. I will just say that. And one of the questions that they also asked during the interview, which is another thing, pay attention to the questions that they are asking you because they're asking for a reason. One of the panelists said, how do you de-stress from working constant overtime? I'm like, oh, okay. This is going to be a situation where there is no balance and I am working around the clock. So that was a big no. So as you are going through the interview process, just make sure to pay attention to the questions they're asking. Don't be afraid to ask questions of them as well. Ask them to describe their workplace culture. If your manager or would-be manager is in the room, ask them to describe their leadership style. Ask them what kind of personalities they get along with best. That will tell you everything you need to know. And also, don't be afraid to ask about what happened to the person before you. And if you want to soften it up and you're like, you say, I don't want to ask that directly, say, hey, the person in my previous position, did they transfer to a different department or did they get promoted? And then sit back and pay attention to the answer. And I just want you to feel empowered throughout, this entire journey and experience. And I want you to be willing to listen to your gut, listen to your heart. It will not leave you astray. If something feels off or it doesn't feel right, you don't have to dive in just to test it out and see if your gut was wrong. I promise you, something is wrong if it feels off. So I see yep, I'm running low on time. So I am going to go ahead and pass it off to Jessica.
Okay, awesome. That was fantastic. I loved hearing both of you. So thank you for that. I did put some slides together and I am not great with tech, so bear with me if I can figure out how to present it.
I've made you host, so you should be able to click share screen and do that now.
Okay, thank you so much, John. Let me just see if I can. Sorry, here we go. Okay, are you guys able to see that?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let me try one more thing. And then if not, we're going to do it slide free.
There it goes.
There
We
we
can
go.
see it. There you go.
Okay. So we're going to start here. So, okay. So I'm just talking about mental health and job search and anybody who is job searching, who has job search, that this is a big component. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about how to support you in that, how you can support yourself in a job search, and especially an extended job search, because that can make a real difference. Okay, so mental health is on a spectrum, and I don't know if people really think about it that way. In general, like the mental health and psychology community does think about it that way, but I think when most people think about mental health, they think about illness, they think about stress, anxiety, depression, those kinds of things. So more on the left-hand side, rather than what can be, which is heading towards thriving, heading towards flourishing, right? Doing well, feeling good, growing. And so I want to kind of just have you gauge yourself. You don't have to share anything, but just kind of where you think you are on that spectrum right now, and especially as it relates to your job search, right? Where would you put yourself? So I don't have a lot of fluff here. I wanted to dive into some of the tips. I think I think that if you've experienced this, you know what it feels like. And I don't really want to kind of go into the problem. I really wanted to focus on what are some solutions. And so I put together 7 tips for today, for kind of how to support yourself and feel better, move more towards that thriving end of the spectrum. So tip 1, it's not you. So I think the underlying thing that happens is as your job search progresses, and actually we can back up, if you were laid off, right? If you were fired, if something happened and you didn't kind of quit a job, if you're in a toxic work environment or a difficult work environment, and that's making you want to, making you want to leave, it can already feel like it's about you as a person, right? Like, why didn't this work out? Why wasn't I successful? Why was I laid off? All of those things. And then as the job search progresses, it feels like it's about you, because the feedback that people often get from their job search is either crickets or it's negative, right? No, we went with another candidate. Thank you for interviewing, but we're going to go in another direction. Like that's the kind of feedback that they get a lot of times. And people tie their self-worth to that feedback. So they start to believe things like, nobody wants me. I'm too old. My experience is outdated. The first thing I want you to do is try to shift your mindset and understand that it is not you. It is job search, and job search is hard. And tying your self-worth and your value in the marketplace to those outcomes or lack of outcomes is really going to mess with you. And so I want you to detach that thinking, and we're going to talk about how to think about it instead. But that's the first step in my view. So tip 2 is to have a plan, and this really connects with the last one. I think it's easy to say, well, it's not me, job search is hard. But then if you don't have a good plan that's actually getting you the results that you're looking for, that's not going to help you either, right? So you need to understand you may have a part to play in the success or not success of the overall picture. But what you really want to do is understand that even with a good plan, you are going to face ups and downs, and that's the nature of the beast. If you have a plan that is getting you some results and you feel good about it, and you're kind of feeling like you're on the right track, right? Then it's going to be easier to understand that those ups and downs really aren't about you, but it's about how job search goes in general. It also, I think, will lessen the fears that start to creep in when your job search is longer, because you can start to see success on the horizon, right? Like there's a reason to believe you could be successful because you've got a plan that you've implemented that is getting you some results, and you don't worry so much like, am I ever going to get a job? Am I, going to use up all my finances? Like, what is going to be the outcome of this? If you know you have a plan, things are going to turn around for you. All right. Self-care is the third one. Lots of people will say, yeah, I know I need to take care of myself. But then the other thing that I hear is, I feel really guilty about it. I know I should be doing more, and I feel guilty that I, went outside for a walk or something. The point is that self-care is actually a real integral part of your job search. It has to be there, because if you're run down, you're not an A player. You can't expect to walk into an interview and really wow people if your battery is on empty. And so really taking care of yourself and maintaining that high level of optimism and like connection with you allows you to go into these situations, interviews, networking, conversations, and really feel like you're bringing your best self, right? So it is an integral part of job search, and you have to build it in. Okay. So optimism is another piece. It's really easy to say, okay, I have to be more optimistic. But how, right? Like how do you do that? I think that knowing that one, optimism is critical, it actually can improve your outcomes. Like scientifically, people have looked at, like, do people who are optimistic perform better at reaching their goals, or, people who are realistic or pessimistic? People who are optimistic can have more success because of that optimism. It helps that motivate them to working towards their goals. But managing the expectations you have around the outcomes of specific actions. So, you send out a networking email and you don't hear back, or you have an interview and you make it to the final rounds and then you don't get the job, right? Yes, it can feel bad in the moment, but letting your feelings of optimism or pessimism hinge on those actions versus having an overall attitude that it is going to work out, you are going to get something great. It's important to not look at the little tiny pieces that you're doing every day and say, like, I'm going to be swung in a direction based on those things, versus like, even though I might not get that job, I know I'm going to get a job, right? I can be optimistic about the overall picture. So related to that is focusing on what you can control. There are going to be things outside your control and things within your control. And the way that I talk about it is focusing on input, not output. So the input is, how many emails did you send? How many jobs did you apply to, maybe? How much research did you do? How much preparation did you do? That's your input. And if you're focused on that, rather than, did I get the job? Did somebody respond to me? It's going to feel a lot better, because you can always adjust what you do, right? And as long as your plan is sound, you know that just turning up the volume on it, you're going to get results, right? It's not this individual email that came back or didn't. It's, I know that I control my fate, and that feels a lot better to people psychologically. All right. So you probably heard before, don't job search alone. And I think one of the benefits that I see, I have a job search group for people who are, midlife professionals, executives. People will say, like, oh, they know intellectually other people are job searching, but having the experience of sitting with other job searchers who are really going through the same thing, realizing they're not alone, is extremely helpful. It's also helpful because people will help you, right? If you're in a group job searching, if you're connected to other people, whether it's like a job search group.
Yeah.
Thank
you so much.
Somebody's
You too.
unmuted, I think. I'm not sure who that is. If you could just mute yourself, that would be awesome. Sorry, I got thrown there for a sec. So knowing that you're not alone, and people will help you. So whether that's a job search group, a formal group, I know Teegan, you have a group too, or whether it's just like friends you get together with, or people that you're connected to on LinkedIn, whatever it is, folks will help you out if you're connected. What I've seen happen multiple times in my group is people will say, oh, I know somebody who does XYZ, which is exactly what you're looking for. Let me connect you, right? that doesn't happen when you're trying to really do it in a silo all by yourself. So don't do it alone. It feels better emotionally. That connection is how humans run. And so that is really important. And then last tip for today is to just invest in your own career growth, especially if you're not working. Lots of people worry about a growing resume gap, or how do I talk about what I'm doing in this time. I had a client say to me today, how should I frame this, because I don't want people to think I'm an unemployed loser. That's how he was thinking about it, and that's so harsh. It's not how people need to think about it. What you can do, though, is invest in yourself and your growth, right? And your learning. Take a course, take a free course online, like whatever it is going to be that you do, that you can then talk about and feel proud of when you're interviewing, or when you're talking about, when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, what have you been doing? Well, I'm job searching and I'm taking this course, right? Those things can add to your resume, but they can also add to your feeling that you are doing something and growing and just making it to the next step of your career. So I think that's a really important piece to feel supported and feel connected. Like you're making progress on that, if nothing else, right? So those are my tips. Got a little bit more time. I don't know if there's any questions, probably for anybody. Yeah.
We'll open it up for questions in the chat, but that was really great, Jessica. Appreciate it. I think when you think of it holistically too, it's like we got to be careful and think about where we're going, how we're going, and self-reflect on ourselves too, right, mentally, because I know I've had to suffer multiple layoffs, and it's like it really gets to you,
Yeah.
and then you start questioning your value, yourself, what you can do. And this is just from personal experience. I've seen this where you're like, oh, and you get into the dumps, and then you make bad choices, right? You accept the lower offer, you go to the employer that's not good, you don't present well in interviews because your battery's empty. Like I've seen that for sure, where if you can't sleep at night because you're stressed about finances, going to the interview in the morning, you're like drinking coffee and just, I need this job so bad, and then you're just you're not confident. People can smell it on you when you're burnt out, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to recharge in one day. One good meal won't do it. You need a weekend. You need some time. Is there anything else you would say in terms of like mindfulness exercises or things people can do when they're like, I've had enough? Like, you get that 5th email that day of you're rejected. Like, what do you do that day when you're like, I've had enough?
Yeah, you stop. You stop that day. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff around. I put that all under self-care. So like the mindfulness, the meditation, the exercise, eating well, like all of those things. And actually, I was just I can't remember where I was talking about it, if it was a post or if it was an email, but talking about like the difference between self-soothing and self-care. And sometimes they're the same things, but self-soothing is like that quick thing you do in the moment when you've had that crappy day, like you're talking about. So how do you like soothe yourself? Like thinking of like like babies, you soothe, right? Like how do you soothe yourself? Sometimes those are constructive things. Sometimes they're not so constructive. And then self-care is like constructive. It's helpful. It helps you like feel better and grow. And we often resort to the self-soothing that isn't really great for us, like comfort eating or whatever. But also, if you can have your self-care activities also be self-soothing. So like stepping away and going for a run on that day, that might be the best thing you can do to like get your head back and feel better, because you can't be productive from that space of negativity.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I mean, I think everyone needs to find what works for them, right? I know for me, what helped always was going doing boxing. And that
Mhm.
was something I did through the layoffs was get into boxing training, and it's like that's a good outlet, and your mind's elsewhere. You know, you clear your head, you forget about that for a while, right? To come back to it recharged, as opposed to just, oh, I got to go apply for 100 more jobs now this weekend,
Yeah,
which is probably not a healthy thing to do, right?
yeah, it's not gonna help you.
Any other questions, anybody, about job search, how to approach it, cultures? We'd love to answer anyone's questions. And one thing to add to that too is check out the Glassdoor ratings and ratings of the companies. You can go and see reviews, and you can actually see as well as if the company's rating has declined over the last 6 months. That's something that we've been doing actually as a recruiter when we check our employers that we're looking at potential clients, is looking at their online reviews of past employees. So that's one way to do a kind of culture check that's been kind of helpful. Now, keep that in mind that there's always, like, as with all review sites, people usually will come if they have a negative review to say. So you gotta, you know, have some balance to it. But I think if you see the review under a 3.5 for the company, that's usually there's some kind of dysfunction going on there, right? We have a question from Craig. Has anyone asked about negative reviews from Glassdoor during an interview?
So I'll say I have not asked about Glassdoor reviews, but one of the things that I typically like to do is search on LinkedIn to see current employees and employees who have worked there before. And if you can talk to a previous employee, that's gold. That's gold. Like, because they don't have any stake anymore, like they have no ties to it, and they will openly express what their concerns were whenever they left. I also just want to mention this. Glassdoor is extremely helpful. But the downside to it is there could be companies with amazing reviews, but I want to mention that there are companies out there who add amazing reviews to Glassdoor for organizations to trick people too. So always see if you can talk to an actual person who used to work there.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point about the fake reviews. I know that for like restaurants, for example, they pay people to come on and do all these fake reviews for them to help them get the Google listing, just so they can get more people to come visit the restaurant. So I imagine same sort of thing going on at companies, right?
There's a lot of differences about job search strategy too, in terms of like when you're conducting this market research. And so if you're having a reactive job search strategy where you see a posted role, you apply to it and you interview, you're opening yourself up for a lot of risk, because in the interview, like Chelsea said, it's their job to sell you on this role. They have a need and you can fill it. And so if you have a more proactive or a more strategic approach to your job search, whether you're looking at job boards or not, when you're crafting, like when you go through your clarity and figure out what target companies might be on your radar, when you go through that target company list, Google might be on it, for example. And you know that, Google has always put their people before profits, and that they're doing a lot of innovation, and they have, a lot of capital to invest in projects. But you reach out to a couple people who are currently in roles that you're interested in, or check out a couple of people who have recently lost their role and ask them how things have changed. You'll find out that Google's culture has changed significantly in the past 2 years. And so doing that research up front before you even get into the interview can set you up for success. Not only avoiding a company that potentially has a culture that has a red flag, but more importantly, allowing you to prepare for your interview. Because now when you apply to that role, you can have a really thoughtful cover letter talking about how you want to be a part of such innovation or such a great culture or whatever. And it's so much more sincere. In the interview, you can have some insider information that you can leverage to really make yourself stand out as that A player candidate that Jessica was talking about. Because A players and B players and C players, they don't look the same. They don't prepare the same. And I know that that is a very triggering way to classify talent when you're a job seeker, but any of us who've ever been in recruitment or who ever been in a position of leadership, when you identify hypos or high potential employees, the same happens during the recruitment process. This is an A player, this is a B player, this is a C player. And so you want to show up as an A player, so do A player stuff. Get the rest, exercise, take a shower. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that just stopped with their grooming because they're so depressed from an extended job search. And then they get in that shower, they put makeup on if you're a woman, or well, if you wear makeup, I should say. And they're like, oh, I just feel brighter. I feel better. I feel cleaner. I'm ready to tackle this day with a new light. And so I really, really, really encourage you, don't wait until the interview. Do the hard research up front and then come with really smart questions to ask.
That's great. I appreciate that input there, especially about like, coming. It's like preparing for the game, right? You got to practice before the main event, and I think that's something we may forget of when we're sort of in the haze of it, right? So, good stuff. Any other questions, anyone? We're about to wrap up. Give another minute here.
I know I speak for myself and I speak for Jessica and Chelsea too when I say you can DM any of us if you have a top question that you don't want to ask in a public area. We are all more than happy to support any of you with any sensitive questions that you have.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, well said, Teegan. Thank you.
That's great. So what we're going to do, just to follow up on today's event, we will have a recording for everybody that we'll share at some point in the next week. So you'll be able to review if there's anything you missed or wanted to see again. There's also going to be an email sequence with an email on each of our speakers with some information on them, as well as some free resources they've offered to send out to everybody. So wanted to thank again Teegan, Chelsea, and Jessica for their time and great insights. I think it really was great, sort of the synergy between all the topics and what we talked about today, because these are things we've all gone through as job seekers, right? It's tough. We need to be mindful of our blind spots when we're in a job search, because we're focusing on the outcome and not the journey of like, where are we going and how are we doing it, and what is our strengths and weaknesses as we do this, right? So I hope everyone got some value of today, and we look forward to our hopefully future events in the future with us. So thanks everyone for coming, and for our speakers again.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you for putting this together, John.
No worries, appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Take care, everybody.